He's always on the lookout for new means to enhance the experience of the everyday world around us. He's always looking for new ways to make us experience each other remotely and through all our senses, such as the huggy pyjama. Are you going to show the huggy pyjama? I'm not saying anything about the huggy pyjama. And he sees no reason why we should not enhance the interaction between humans and pets, even poultry, and between humans and robots. He is editor-in-chief of a journal I never heard of, but cannot wait to start reading. Lovotics, the academic studies of love and friendship with robots. Interesting. Ladies and gentlemen, we are very pleased to have him here, for real. He's director of the Imagineering Institute in Malaysia. He's a chair professor of pervasive computing at the City University in London, founder and director of the Mixed Reality Lab in Singapore, and recipient of numerous awards. I will mention two. The Young Global Leader Award by the World Economic Forum, an award to recognize and acknowledge the top young leaders from around the world for their professional accomplishments, commitment to society, and potential to contribute to shaping the world of tomorrow. Isn't that something? Most impressively, however, he was awarded honorary expert by El Bulli, at that time the #1 restaurant in the world. Ladies and gentlemen, it's not a monk, it's not Donald Trump, it's Adrian Chioc.
Thank you very much for the very warm introduction, and thank you for the chairpersons and committee to invite me here, this great conference, and thank you all for coming today to this talk. And also it's great to be in Amsterdam, one of my favorite cities. And I had the good chance to see Van Gogh Museum yesterday, so it was like a dream come true for me to see his real paintings and the sunflowers. So today I want to talk about how we can extend, I can't, where do I point this thing? There we go, okay. In the air. I want to talk about how we can extend all of our 5 senses throughout the world using mixed and augmented reality to enhance our everyday life experience. Because now a lot of our communication is done online, and probably in the future it's going to be more and more online and through the internet. And I think we should be like this famous samurai. I'm wearing my kimono today. And this famous samurai, if you know, was blind. He was blinded in a battle, but he went to win the final war, even though he was blind, because he could perceive through all of his senses the world and still win the war. And we should be like that through the internet, be able to experience the world and communication with all of our 5 senses. But if you look at today's computer technology, it's very much about either looking at the glass or touching the glass on your iPad or iPhone, or looking at the glass of your laptop. And as if in the real world we could look at through the window, we can see the window, but we can't open the window, and we can't touch or taste or smell through the window. So we will need to open this window of the internet. And also, related science has shown that more than half of our human communication is non-verbal. So it's essential to have this non-verbal communication online. That's why it's still very different to physically be here all together in Amsterdam than if we just ran this conference through Skype on video call. There's something tangibly different from being in the physical world, and we need to have this communication when we communicate online. So right now we live in the age of information, and we have access to essentially unlimited data right in your pocket. You can just pick up and ask Professor Google anything you want, and you'll get the answer. So we've already reached the age of information, but I think the next stage of internet will be the age of experience, where we can communicate all of our experiences online. And what does it really feel like to be somewhere? Or what does it really feel like to be with someone or have dinner with someone? We'll be able to do this through the internet. So I won't talk about my earlier work on augmented reality, which was based on audio-visual, because this talk is just 20-minute short talk. But that's how I really got started. I was working on augmented reality, and we made systems where you could see virtual objects in the physical world. But what I found is that we could put a very realistic rose on the table, and you could see it in full 3D. But people wanted to touch it and wanted to smell it, but you can't do that just using your head-mount display. So I wanted to extend the augmented reality to all of the 5 senses. And so I'll talk about touch first, and touch is one of the, I think, very important senses. And I think it's not just a desire of people to touch, but a basic need. And there was a study done on infant rhesus monkeys, and they gave the infant a choice to go to a very realistic mother monkey made out of fur, but a doll without any milk or food, and another monkey which was made out of wire, so it didn't look very real, but it had the food. And the infant monkey would almost always choose the furry, realistic monkey and hug her. And so they often had to stop the experiments because the monkey might starve. So maybe the need for touch is even more than the need for us to eat. In humans as well. So I wanted to make systems that we could communicate touch through the internet. And I thought a good way to start would be to have a communication with our pets, because unfortunately we still can't talk to animals. So when you're here at the conference, you can't telephone call to your pet dog at home because we can't talk. But you can hug your dog or pet. And that's not what we normally do when we communicate with our pets, we hug them. So we made a system where you had a physical avatar doll that had sensors, and when you could be at work or at school or in conference, and you could squeeze the doll, and then your pet, in this case was a pet chicken, would feel the squeezing in the same place on her body. And just like the previous talk, we also were very much interested in hugging through the internet. So we made a system based on the poultry internet you just saw for human-to-human communication. It was called a huggy pajama. And you could both wear this hugging pajama, and you can squeeze the doll, and then you can hug through the internet. So, for example, parents who are at work or at a conference like now, you can not only give your child a telephone call, but you can squeeze them through the internet. And I'll show you a quick video of this system now.
The future is coming fast, and your world will never be the same.
The future we hold.
There are few things in life more comforting or intimate than a nice, big hug.
Notice the
No technology, it was awesome.
At the Mixed Reality Lab in Tokyo, Japan, Dr. Adrian Chioke and his team are making it possible to reach out and hug someone, even if that someone isn't there.
Adrian, at this mixed reality lab, you have a lot of strange things going on. I can't figure this one out. It looks like a cross between a torturous life vest, rain jacket. What is going on, and who is this?
Well, this is Nancy, my student.
Hey,
and
Nancy.
Mixed reality is not just about visuals. It's also about mixing all of our senses with the virtual world,
Okay.
including touch.
Touch. So this is a touch vest.
That's right. Through the internet now, you can email someone, you can do video chat, but you can't touch someone, you can't hug someone. So with this,
Oh, sure you can. No. I've seen people do it all the time. You put a little asterisk, you say hug, and then you put another asterisk, and then they know you've sent them a hug.
it's so important for human communication to touch and hug each other.
So Justin Timberlake brought sexy back. You're bringing hugs back.
That's right.
How does this replicate a real hug?
And if you just give a hug.
My expert hug?
Yes. We did a study of expert huggers such as yourself,
Okay.
and where you put your hands is where we put our special hugging actuation system on the body.
Hugging actuation system.
So this system here
Yeah.
will replicate the feeling of where you
So
are.
it's going to apply some pressure where my hands would be.
Exactly. It gives a kind of feeling of the human hand caress
Okay.
on your body, on the body.
Let's see it work.
With Nancy far, far away in another location, Adrian takes out a controller and transmits his virtual hug via the internet.
And then you can see that this hugging pajamas connected to the internet produces the hug in the same spot. We can both wear such jackets, and then interactively we can have a hugging and caressing together through the internet.
What if I wanted to...
So there was a lot of wires and things hanging out of that jacket. That was a very early prototype. But my student who was working on this project, he graduated his PhD, and he actually made a company to sell a hugging jacket, and it's on sale now, I think in Singapore only currently. But the market is for a specific market of autistic children, because apparently autistic children, when they have a panic attack, if they're hugged or squeezed, they can reduce their panic. So with this system here, you can monitor your child's health through the internet with your smartphone, and it has some sensors like heart rate and skin conductivity. And when your child is having a panic attack, you can just press a button on your smartphone and give your child a hug to hopefully reduce their panic. But I think that it's still going to be a long time before every day we wear hugging suits in everyday life. So we tried to make some smaller version of this hugging system. And we looked at what do people normally wear in everyday life and still feel very comfortable. So for example, people can wear glasses, people can wear necklaces, earrings, bracelets, watches, and rings. And if you're wearing these, you forget about it, and it's just very comfortable. So we decided to make a mini hug ring where you could squeeze and send a squeeze to your friend through the internet anywhere in the world. And basically, it has some 4 sensors. It has some very high-speed motors to stimulate your haptic sensors on your skin, and it connects to internet with Bluetooth to your smartphone. And here's some of the pictures of the prototypes of the system. And basically, you can squeeze the ring, and it will send the squeeze to your partner. And then your partner can also squeeze and send back the squeeze. And it also has color as well, so you can communicate your mood. For example, maybe if you're very happy, yellow, it will turn your partner's ring yellow. There's the internal electronics. You can see we had difficulty because now the PCB board's about the limit of smallness that we can build. So we're designing some circular PCBs now to make a more smaller ring. The ring can communicate to any of your friends through your smartphone because it connects to your social networks. And one thing I want to say is that we don't need to just model the real world when we digitize the sensors. So for example, in the real world, we can only really hug one person at a time or shake one person's hand at a time. But once we digitize this, we can have new modes of communication. For example, one-to-many. Let's say, for example, you have some very happy news. You just got a new job or a pay rise. You could send a hug to all 10,000 of your Facebook friends at the same time, okay? And that's not possible in the real world. And there's also many-to-one. So what would be an example of many-to-one? Well, we were doing a project with a Korean company called Spark Lab, and they want to do a project where you could squeeze a Korean pop star, okay? So maybe like, for example, Taylor Swift or whoever's popular in Amsterdam, but it's very difficult for millions of people to hug that one person, but instead you could pay $1 and send her a hug through your ring. So that's an example of many-to-one hugging. But not just hugging and squeezing, but also kissing is a very important form of physical interaction in the real world. So we've been thinking how can you kiss each other through the internet? So for example, here's a scenario. Maybe a daughter is studying at school, maybe at CMU, and the parents are in Europe, and they can communicate online and send each other a kiss, and send each other a kiss through the internet. Or maybe your grandmother's birthday, and you want to send her a kiss. It's very difficult to do that online now. So I'll show you a video of this Kissinger system now.
Critical for robots because we're going to touch robots, then the haptic communication is critical. So I can be in Malaysia, and my friend or family can be in the other side of the world, Hong Kong, New York, and then we can see each other on the video call of the phone. But then we can also send a kiss. So for example, I put this on my mouth and send a kiss.
So what I feel is the other person is kissing me, and I feel pressure on my lips. It's as if the other person is kissing me right now. So in the future, we're also planning to integrate the smell of your partner's body odor, for example, to create a more realistic sense of presence. Yeah.
And is it nice to kiss? Can you kiss one more time and see if it's nice?
I can feel it moving, so
We do a lot of crazy experiments in my lab like that. By the way, that was filmed by the Dutch National Television. They had a feature, I think, about the future of sex, and then this was on there. So I think you might have seen it on TV here. But now we are developing the system you just saw, and it connects, as you saw, connects to your smartphone. So similarly, you can connect to your friend on Facebook and then kiss them through the internet. Now, finally, I want to talk about taste and smell, and these are the two senses which we very rarely think about when we're talking about communication with computers or online. But actually, taste and smell are very important because they are the only two senses that directly connect to the limbic system of the brain, which is the part of the brain, the earliest part of our brain, which is responsible for a lot of memory and emotional function. So a smell and a taste can directly and subconsciously affect your memory or affect your mood. So it's really powerful. And you might have had the case where you smell something, you remember your grandmother or something in your childhood. But unfortunately, unlike light and sound, which are frequency-based, and we can easily digitize frequencies because it's just a number, and it can be easily turned into binary bits. But taste and smell are chemical-based, and we can't transmit molecules through the internet. We can't send them through radio waves. So it's a fundamental difficulty of tasting and smelling through the internet. We've been working with a company in Japan to make a device that you can send a smell through your mobile phone. And you can see some of the early prototypes that we built. Started pretty big, but it's getting smaller and smaller, and now it's the size where you can easily attach to your smartphone and send someone a smell through their mobile phone anywhere in the world. This is the version which is on sale in Japan. It's called Senti, and I'll show you a video of the system now.
Food is inseparable from the history of mankind. And now, 2013, introducing a whole new approach to food, tasting and savoring food with your nose.
This means nose barbecue.
How to 1, choose. 2, insert. 3, smell. 4, eat. And that's all there is to it. So, are we ready to savor this? Let's say you're a student with no money. All you need is some white rice and your stomach will feel satisfied. Let's say you're a woman on a diet. Obviously, calories are not an issue when you're dining at Hana Yakiniku.
So we were contacted a couple of years ago by a restaurant in Spain called Mugaritz, and the chef who started that restaurant, you can see on the right-hand side there with the glasses, Chef Andoni Louis-Adariz. He's one of the top chefs in the world. I think he was ranked number 3 by Guardian newspaper in UK. And he said, Adrian, the chef in the 21st century is not just about chopping carrots and frying meat. It's about creating experiences. And he said the chef in the 21st century should be making both analog and digital experiences. So he wanted to work with us to make a version of the Senti for Marguerites, and you could virtually cook some of their signature dishes, and then the smell would come from your smartphone. So even if you couldn't visit his restaurant in Spain, you could still have some experience of his cooking. But as I mentioned before, fundamental difficulty with taste and smell is it's chemical based. So this Senti, of course, eventually will run out of the chemicals and you have to refill it like you refill your inkjet printer. So we're now concentrating on how can we stimulate taste and smell using just electrical signals, because then you can send the signals through the internet. You could taste or smell through your computer. And we built a device which attaches to your tongue, and it directly stimulates the taste receptors on your tongue to produce an artificial taste sensation. Of course, your tongue only has the 5 basic tastes: sour, salty, sweet, bitter, and umami, but you can stimulate these basic tastes without any chemicals. And the importance of this is that you can then send the taste through the internet. Okay? Next, please. There we go. So here's an early prototype of our electrical taste machine, and it has electrodes which you put on your tongue to stimulate the taste just using electrical current. And now what we're working on is a device that can stimulate smell. Smell is what we think about as taste actually is smell. So when you're drinking coffee or eating a chocolate cake, you're tasting sweet and bitter on your tongue, but the rest is actually smell. You're smelling it through your olfactory receptor. So we're developing a device that can, again, stimulate your olfactory bulb using only electrical signals. And again, once we can achieve this is still work in progress. We haven't achieved it yet, but we're working on it now. Then again, you could send a smell through the internet. And just like I was talking about touch, when we digitize taste and smell, we don't just need to reproduce what we can do in the physical world. So of course, initially it's going to be fantastic to send a smell of chocolate to your grandmother or a scent of strawberry on your daughter's birthday. But we will have completely new kinds of communication. So for example, children could program food. So you could code food on the computer, on your iPad, and then send that to your grandmother, who can taste and smell it through the internet on the other side of the world. And chefs, for example, I mentioned Chef Andoni, you'll be able to taste and smell the food of any chef in the world, famous chefs, or watch MasterChef on TV, and you can not just see it, but taste and smell that food. And also cooking is a kind of communication. People used to communicate together in the kitchen, but now we're living in different cities or different countries. So you could also have cooking interaction. For example, grandfather cooks a dish together with his grandson through the internet. So, okay, yes. So anyway, to summarize, I hope we can all work together to produce different kinds of multi-sensory experiences through the internet, and then we will be able to really feel a new sense of presence online. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I'm sure everyone in the audience would like to know, who was the woman you were kissing in this laboratory? And how did it feel?
Very real.
Very real, okay. No more questions. Actually, I have some more questions. Before I allow you to bring questions to our excellent speakers, I have 2 questions myself that I would like to offer first. Let me sit down, why not? First, you both stimulated or simulated hugging. That was clear, right? And apparently that's an experience that many people all over the world like to have. And if it's somehow obstructed because we are not in the same place, it's great if we can somehow reconstruct that experience. Okay, that's probably the reason why you bring these experiences and find the technology to simulate them. And that made me wonder, and you hinted at it just a little bit, Adrian, are there experiences that are not in the real world, but that we could, through technology, create completely new ones? I mean, the one-to-many hug and the many-to-one hug is an example of it, but even non-hugging experiences that we do not know yet. Could you reflect on this, please?
Me?
You or
okay.
Jody, or you can start.
You
can go
okay,
first.
all right. So, well, I think that already we're seeing, for example, people can feel empathy and fall in love with non-humans. So for a very simple example is, it's not very strange for people to fall in love with their pets. They actually love their pets, and they're non-human. So we have that capacity, I think, because we have empathy built into our brain, and we're not robots, so we can't just stop the empathy just for humans. It will extend to other things. But so already people are falling in love with virtual characters. In Japan, there's a famous singer who's purely virtual, and she was made by Yamaha, and people go and see her concerts, even though she's just a projection on the stage. And some people actually fall in love with her. So we will, I think it'll become quite normal. We will fall in love and we will hug virtual characters through the internet. So it doesn't have to be a real human like communication. And secondly, robots. Robots are becoming, as we saw now, previously, robots becoming more and more realistic. We feel empathy to robots. So we will want to hug and touch robots in our daily life. So I think these would be new modes of interaction. But actually, I always think we're always going back to the future, because I'm actually half Greek, and there's a story in ancient Greece about a man who falls in love with a statue that he created. I think you might know Pygmalion. And so I think we've been thinking about this concept for thousands of years already. We can fall in love, and we want to hug non-humans.
Okay. Jody, would you like to add to this?
Yeah, I'll just add, I think, unfortunately, a lot of research and development in this area takes the form of looking at what happens in human-to-human interaction and then replicating it with technology. And I think Adrian's work really starts to push beyond that, and I hope that more people can do that.
Yeah. Yeah, this also brought me to a question that is already in my mind for a couple of years, and some of my colleagues know about this. This is about design and emotion. So we have a couple of hundred emotions. Peter de Smet knows the exact number. But these emotions have become part of our repertoire through a million years of evolution for some good reason, right? If we change our world with the new technology that we have, shouldn't we expand our repertoire of emotions? Shouldn't we create new emotions that we have never felt before? Isn't that exciting?
Can we?
Next question. Can we?
Can we is my question.
Yeah. Should we try?
Well, there's a very famous study where they studied infants, and apparently all humans before about age of 6 to 8 months can recognize monkey faces. I mean, recognize the difference. Right. So just like we can recognize humans as being different, we have that ability when we're born, because that must have been useful maybe 100 million years ago when we were all living in Africa with monkeys. But then for some reason the brain figures out we don't need that anymore. So after about 6 to 8 months, your brain deletes that function in your brain. So I think similarly, your brain can create some kind of new emotion, some kind of new function. It's possible.
Yeah, but it might take a while.
I think it will take longer than the lifespan of people in this room. But I do think as new technologies come on board, we change structurally to respond to those, we change cognitively to respond to those, and so probably, for example, the way we read is now different than it was even 10 years ago because of the way that we're reading in small chunks. So I think things will evolve, but quite slowly.
Okay, let me address another issue, and then you can. One more. The other thing I was thinking, and that's sort of a, if we can mimic or recreate or simulate all these real-world experiences in an artificial world, in a mixed reality world, these worlds, we can design them perfectly, right? The kiss of your machine can be perfect. Then we come home. So, is there any possibility of a rebound effect, that our perfect interaction with technology rebounds into real life in a way that we may not desire?
Well, one of my friends is Dr. David Levy in London, and he wrote a book, Love and Sex with Robots. And so one of the questions he asks is if your wife, for example, has sex with a robot, is that counted as infidelity, right? So, but nobody has the answer to that now because we haven't experienced that really. We don't really, but that's coming soon. I think everyone in this room could easily imagine that this will happen sometime.
We can ask the audience to vote for it.
So we don't really know yet. Will people think that's infidelity, or more like, masturbation or something? So, I think a society will adapt, and it's only 50 years ago that in the greatest computer scientist in the world, Alan Turing, or one of them, was prosecuted for being homosexual, right? And now we wouldn't even bat an eyelid if someone is homosexual. We don't care. So I think societies can easily adapt to any kind of situation that with this new technology. I think that. We will find the answers.
We will just become better kissers, all of us. Yeah, that's great. Audience, it's your turn. Over there. Please. Could you stand up and tell me your name and where you're from, and then ask the question?
So where you're from is actually
I know. The long story.
My name is Sarah. I work at Philips Design. And now where do I come from? Delft. So I have two questions. One is I would like to know the name of this famous singer in Japan who's virtual. Do you know?
It's not. You can easily Google Yamaha virtual singer. Yeah. Sorry, I forgot the name now. Yes.
Professor Google. Okay.
Yes, Professor Google.
And then the other question I had was I saw a documentary at the Dutch TV about robots. And it was actually about the fact that robots were broadly accepted, for example, in Japan, and like the Dutch are quite skeptical about robots. I was just wondering, why is it that some cultures are much more open to these kind of changes or these kind of technologies, and other cultures less? And I don't know if you can answer this question, but yeah, I was just wondering.
Well, I think in the Japanese example, people are much more, robots are much more in the forefront of their minds because of science fiction and movies. Products are already being developed. So it's kind of the cultural immersion has already happened. Much as, for example, where I live, we're accepting autonomous vehicles now because we see them. So I think that's got a lot to do with it.
So I just want to add to that, from my discussions with friends in Japan, I don't think anyone has a definitive answer, but in Japan, the religion basically is Buddhism and Shinto, the original, and so for Shinto, which is a kind of animism, everything has a soul. So you go to Kyoto and you go to look at a beautiful rock garden. People think the soul, rock has a soul. Anything can have a soul. So there's not much of a jump to think robot has a soul as well. So I think any kind of culture based on this kind of religion, including Buddhism, it's much more easier to accept that everything can have a soul. And in Christianity, I think basically we only think humans have a soul, or maybe some animals, I'm not sure, but it doesn't extend to like rocks and trees and things like that.
Yeah,
so this could be
actually also coming back on the documentary that everything that you saw, that is true. So yeah, I just think it's very interesting. And just one other thing, because I also saw in the documentary there's even, for example, a temple, that if your robot doesn't work anymore, you can donate the parts or the different parts of the robot to the temple, so that it actually gets a new life. I just find it very interesting that, yeah, that the culture of Japan already easily adapts to this new idea of, yeah, robots. And, yeah, here I think we still need to go a long way.
Thank you, Sarah. More questions in front here. Please wait for the mic. Yeah, and introduce yourself.
I'm Dominika. I work for a company called Skyscanner, and I work in the Edinburgh office. As a tech company, every single change that we do to our product needs to be backed by data from A/B tests and different experiments, and that can get quite dry from time to time. And recently we had a situation when we launched a Facebook bot and people interacted with it. However, a couple of days later, it was actually our social media manager that went viral with her very human answers to somebody's post. So my question is, how do we test emotion in a non-academic setting, such as our company? And also, how do we design tech to be more human? Or should we?
Jody? Or?
Well, I think the Facebook example is fascinating. And I wonder if you just released that to all of your customers at once, or if you did a pre-test with a small group.
It was launched first in America and then to UK market.
So it seems like there were unanticipated outcomes from that design, which is can be interesting, can be unfortunate. As far as designing technology to be more humane, well, I think it's really interesting, and if I can speak for you, I think our careers have danced around this question of when it's appropriate to do so and when not. And I think this is something that the design and development communities are really struggling with, because I think the answer is not consistent in all domains and all contexts for all people with all kinds of technology. And I think we're only beginning to think about the ethics and implications of what we design. Going back to the autonomous cars, which we're living, there's a lot of questions about who's responsible for when that makes an error. And someone did die in the US. I don't know if people know. His car was against a white truck, and there was a misreading of the sensors, and there was a fatal crash. And the company's answer was, well, statistically, you're still safer than when when a human is driving. So, you know, what kind of answer is that to that person's family? So in any case, I don't think it's a simple answer.
Adrian, you want to add to this, or?
Well, I just want to say that there will be some initial difficulties, and it's great that your company's starting to use chatbots. But if you've seen recently, Google, Facebook, Microsoft, they all bought chatbot companies. So I think whether we like it or not, this is fast becoming a reality, and it just makes total sense for companies. Your chatbot can talk to 1 million people at the same time. It doesn't cost you any more. Whereas if you hire people, it's every person you have to answer on the telephone or on the internet, it costs you money. So I think there will be some initial difficulties, but the reality is there, I think, already, that most companies are going to start using chatbots to communicate with their customers. So they will become more sophisticated, and all the big companies are buying chatbots now. So I think it's very good for your company to get in early. And actually, some people prefer to talk to a computer than a human. Maybe they feel a bit embarrassed. For example, virtual doctor. Maybe some people feel embarrassed to talk to a real doctor, but they feel more comfortable just to talk to a robot. So we have to think also that it's not just disadvantages. In a lot of situations, people may actually really prefer to talk to a computer, and it's available 24/7, anytime.
Next time I'll give a presentation in a room like this, I will just imagine it's all robots. That makes it much easier. Marco.
Okay.
Oh, really? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. More questions? We have some time. Over there? Yeah.
Hi, I'm Hee-kyung Jung, an assistant professor at University of Cincinnati, like from Ohio. I have a question about like tactile interaction. So I think we talk about uncanny valley in for the appearance of robots. So for your tactile representation, I wonder if people feel like repulsive about like really realistic like tactile experience. And then in also like to this example, like have you considered like some other factors or as you iterate the realistic tactile experience?
One tactile experience that I have directly worked with is we have a robot that is dynamically stable. It balances on a ball. It's like a tall column, and you can move the robot with a pinky. So this is a kind of tactile communication. It's actually manipulation of the robot, and it's quite different than any wheeled robot. And people feel quite comfortable with it. And they want the robot to go faster and do more. They don't feel unsafe at all. So I think that's an interesting data point that I can report.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you're very right. We had this experience in my lab when we were developing the Kiss Messenger. And the first version was the kind of human head with some lips. And the first thing most people said is, this looks so creepy, that I want to use it. So then we went to the other extreme, where it's no representation of actual human lips. But the times are changing. So recently we had some discussion. We're collaborating with Professor Hiroshi Ishiguro in Osaka University, and he's making very realistic humanoid robots. So we're now making a new version of the Kiss Messenger with a very realistic head with lips. And I think now the technology is getting close enough that we can overcome the uncanny valley, like you said, and people will want to have a realistic human representation of who they're kissing. So, for example, you could make a very realistic 3D robot of your grandmother, and even if she passes away, you don't just have to look at photographs, but you can hug and kiss your grandmother, even if she's passed away. So this would be a new kind of memory as well of our family.
I think a product like that has an important symbolic aspect, whereas the one that you showed, which I love the form factor of, by the way, is discreet and can be held in the pocket. I could be kissing anyone. I can be having the model of the grandmother in my home and really demonstrating the importance of my relationship with her, even though she's passed. It's very interesting.
So maybe both people want different types of realism for these kind of interfaces. Yeah.
I can't wait to see what kind of studies you guys will run. Because Ishiguro did the study where he had a robot that looked like himself, and then himself, and they raised the curtain for 3 seconds, and then subjects had to try to tell who was real and who was the robot. So.
We have a couple of more questions. First over there, and then this one. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Michael. I'm an anthropologist. I want to thank you for these presentations. Before I systematically criticized what we're doing here. Is it not that our emotional loneliness or emotional bankruptcy is because of all the technophile gadgets we have around us? Are we fighting a disease with the same poison?
Mm-hmm.
Who wants to go first?
Next.
well, whether or not we are, I don't think it's going to change, unfortunately. I think what could change is people waking up to consider the ethical and purposeful uses of this technology. But really, since the advent of any technology, some of it is used in less than ethical ways. And I just don't think that's going to change, unfortunately.
Well, you have a very good point, and I remember attending a conference a few years ago in Korea, and there was a lot of futurists, speaking, and then I think someone made a question, or maybe it was a Twitter comment, that these guys are all trying to solve the problem of today's technology with more technology, is exactly what you're saying. And so it's kind of like a dogma. We just need more and better technology. And it's like Windows, right? We got to Windows 10 and it's still so hard to use, right? But they just keep saying, no, we need more features, a bit better, right? But there is a very realistic problem, and I think anyone will agree that smartphone, internet has brought immense benefits to humanity and society. At the same time, the fact that you can just look at your phone and be nowhere, be in the kind of ether of the internet, and then you see people at the restaurant, maybe whole families or people on a dinner date, and they're just staring at the phone for a couple of hours. And sometimes I wonder, what's the point of going to the restaurant and having dinner when you're all kind of in the virtual world? So I think we have to educate society how to handle this technology. And if we understand, for example, that the phone is so addictive, that if you look at it, you're going to be, you lose a sense of presence of where you are or who you're with. And if we educate ourselves to not always stare at our phone or related things, I think the answer is education, because
it's always the answer.
Yes.
My definition of a smartphone is to communicate with someone who's not here now.
Yes.
And that's sad.
But the problem is, like I said, like I was saying, and I think what you're saying as well, is that when we're with people in the real world, we are looking at our phone and we're in the neverland of the internet. So we have to educate ourselves. It's just like cocaine was legal until the 60s, right? And then we figured out we should ban cocaine. So maybe we have to realize these smartphones are actually addictive. And there's been studies to show that when they put people in an MRI machine, the same signals when you're playing slot machine, gambling, is the same signals you get when you're checking your message, because out of every 100 messages you get some jackpot. You're invited to give a speech at Design and Emotion or something like that. So what it means is actually addictive. Just like playing jackpot at the casino is addictive, so is checking your phone, and we should realize that. And we have to educate and control ourselves.
Is that a point for me or for you?
For everyone in society. Everyone. Yeah, everyone. Yeah.
Adrian, you just made me realize that we have the same tempo as Microsoft. Edition 10 of...
Oh, yes, that's right.
Right.
That's number 10.
Matthew, please.
So Matt Malpass from Central St. Martin's. My question relates to humour and the role that humour plays in the sort of the development of this type of technology. It's certainly there in the communication and presentation of everything that we've seen. It's very humorous in the way that you've set up the scenarios and the stories that contextualise the work. So is that present through the design process? Are you trying to win us over with humorous intervention?
Me?
Both.
I think humor is important to me personally, because I feel like if we're not deriving enjoyment and happiness from what we do, it's very hard designing anything. So for example, when we designed the SnackBot field studies, we had a lot of fun writing the dialogue and figuring out what the robot could talk about and what jokes it could tell, and consequently seeing what people did. I have lots of hilarious footage, which unfortunately I can't show you, but it is a very real look at, a person interfacing with a robot. So personally for me, humor is important. I think it's a universal thing that we feel, and no matter where we can go and in what culture, if we share a laugh, I feel like it's very equalizing. So personally, I think it's important.
Yeah, I think every designer, every engineer, basically somehow expression of your personality when you design objects. So I don't think anything that we design, or I designed, in the lab, deliberately was meant to be humorous. But I do feel happy when people find it funny, because that means they feel some kind of pleasure about seeing it. Yesterday I was at the Van Gogh Museum, as I mentioned, and he's done the most important arts in whole of history of mankind, some of the paintings. But he was very depressed, right? And he shot himself in the chest, I found out yesterday. And cut off his ear. I think we all know he cut off his ear. So I don't know. You can be very depressed, and yet you can produce great works that make people feel extremely joyful. So I think ultimately it's about your personality and about how you want people to feel when they use your works or see your works. Yeah.
But framed in such a way, and the way that it's been to be very engaging and entertaining, is there a risk of it not being taken seriously?
Well, I think I think it depends. I think it depends on the perspective. So I think I had a very good experience. I spent many years living in Japan, maybe 10 plus years, and you can see 100 times more crazy and wacky research in Japan, and some of it doesn't go out of Japan because it's just presented in Japanese at Japanese domestic conferences. So I think it depends. So my reference is maybe different from someone who's doing work in some other country, for example. And I think ultimately you have to do things from your heart, and if people don't take it seriously, then it's okay, as long as you're doing something from your heart. I think that's more important for a designer or engineer.
Are you happy? Satisfied? Please, one or two more. I think those two. Yeah.
I think I have the microphone now.
Where are you? You're over there. Oh.
Hi, I'm Ilaya. I'm from everywhere, but mainly from Delft today. So throughout both presentations, I started thinking about a lot of things, but now I'm focusing back to that conversation about addiction. And yeah, let's put it like this. During these presentations, I saw a lot of attention on kind of resembling some experiences that we have, and maybe even create new ones. And I'm wondering, like, this thing with addiction actually is that there is a study I kind of know that says that it's not about what is the substance or the action, but it is about the social condition of the individuals that makes them more prone to get addicted to something. So this focus on creating new experiences when people cannot even live the life they have, is there actually something we can do to solve this problem instead of going further? Like, can't we just use the same tools to focus on what we have and how to fix it, because it's clearly not working? So for me, resembling smells could be a good tool to record smells that in a bit we won't be able to smell anymore, because some environments are going to be different forever, for example. And yeah, and I think there's a big potential both in robotics and these, let's say, advanced technology experiences, but shouldn't we stop a second and think what's the best way to use it, and maybe also look at our past and not only at our future?
Thank you.
I agree. I think you make good points. And one extensive depiction of that I've read about is the slide I showed with the human figure and the circles around it, that essentially soon we will all be having a dashboard of data about us, and we can know if we're inclined to be depressed or addictive, and perhaps these products can change in those instances to help people rather than giving them the same or more of the same.
Okay, so yeah, very good question. And if you look at the history of media, every media that came out, people wanted to stop it. For example, printing press, they wanted to smash all the printers because they thought reading would be dangerous for a common person to read. And photography, people wanted to ban it because you could take photos of naked people similarly for cinema, everything, right? So I think every media we invent definitely has some good and bad potential. But if you look overall, I think most people would agree that every media has brought some overwhelmingly positive effect on society. For example, books. I mean, no one would disagree that it's fantastic that we can read, everyone can read. We're just seeing, Marshall McLuhan wrote in the 60s, that basically every new media is just a layer. So we have internet, but we still listen to radio. It didn't disappear. So it's just wrapping another layer on what we already have. So I don't think that any new media or new technology is different in the fact that it has the potential for good or for bad. And what we have to do, similar to what I was saying before, is we basically have to educate ourselves how to use these media in a positive way. So for example, hugging pajama, I used to get a lot of questions saying that, wouldn't this be good for bad parents? They can stay at work longer and just hug their kids through the internet with a button. Or even worse, you just program a computer to automatically send a hug to your kids, right? So you can imagine these negative scenarios, right? But on the other hand, I had personal emails. One which I can remember was that the father said that his child is in the intensive care ward of the hospital. He can't go inside, so he wants to hug his child through the window. Can he buy one of our systems? I said, unfortunately, they're just research prototypes. They're not for sale. They don't really work outside the lab. And then I got another one from a young girl. I don't know how old she was. That sounded like a young teenager. She said, I want to hug my dad. He's in prison. Right? And so I think that made me think. Our job is really to try to push the barriers. I think people will find positive ways to use this technology, and we should try to educate society to use more positive ways. Of course, we have to always think of the negative effects, but overall, I think it'll bring positive effect to society.
I like your attitude.
I think these are beautiful last words for this session. No, we have to stop, I'm sorry. You can ask the questions later. I just want to make a final remark and then make you do something. So, Adrian, you are the best example of the limitations of technology by just bringing your daughter to Amsterdam instead of hugging her over a distance. And as a matter of fact, not only Design in Motion is 10, Kotoko will be 10 tomorrow. So I think it's just fair for all of us to give her a happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Kotoko. Happy birthday to you. Okay, you may have wondered what these people were doing here in the corner. Did you? No, not really. They were drawing. That's what designers do, that's what designers learn. And they made a collage, I should say, of everything that has been said in the past 90 minutes. Of the topics, of the people, of the issues, of the uncertainties, and they are all here. So I didn't have a look at it yet, but I just want to draw your attention to the board and see with the great drawers here what they have come up with. The snack pot is here. The chicken is here. Of course, the kissing jar is here. Do things from your heart. So could you please explain
a little bit more?
A little bit more, yeah.
Yeah, sure.
It's for you. Do you need a mic? Yeah.
Or can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah? I'll just do it this way then.
Yeah, thank you.
Save us some. What were some things we found out and came back? First off, we tried to. Oh, thanks. Thank you. First, we focused on what has been said in the presentations from before, which were, for instance, the eBay bot or the hug pillow, and of course, well, the Kissinger was one part. We had the hug jacket, and then we had a look at the things that were discussed during the question rounds. And what came up were in the future it's probably going to be more layers of technology. So we're not necessarily making the old ones disappear, we're just adding layers on top of that. And we are constantly still in this struggle or this balance of the technological world and our real world, but we still need to remember to do things from your heart, because that's the core of everything here.
Wow, that's a beautiful summary. Thank you so much.